It's been said that translation is a journey over a sea from one shore to another. A man who grew up in Maine has made that journey many times.
Canaan Morse is an award-winning translator of Chinese literature. And as 207's Beth McAvoy found, that is a line of work with a world of challenges.
You grew up in Manchester, Maine, a small town outside of Augusta. I imagine you weren't exposed to a lot of Chinese language speakers. How did you get interested in the language?
Well, my parents both believed that learning a foreign language was incredibly important for everyone, but particularly for kids, since studies show that your ability to absorb foreign languages is really at its highest when you're very young. So they started exposing me to not only the foreign languages, but different foreign cultures from the time I was very young. And when I was 4, 5, 6, that age, my parents were reading me a lot of mythology. And I became obsessed as a kid with all things ancient. And when my parents bought me a book of Chinese myths, I was totally hooked.
When Canaan Morse was 10, he started taking Chinese lessons from Professor Chung Hung at Colby College. She also served as his advisor when he was getting his undergraduate degree at Colby.
The Chinese believe that your relationship with your teacher is one of the greatest relationships, most important relationships you can have in your life. They're very much like another parent. And so it was really because of under her tutelage that I sort of was able to turn an interest into a passion.
How did you get interested in translating?
Well, I have always been fascinated by puzzles, especially, you go to a church and you see writing on the wall in Latin, or you watch a documentary about the Rosetta Stone or about ancient Egypt, and you see hieroglyphics and you think, I want to be able to read that. That's what I think. After all, I've always loved the process of deciphering.
What is the hardest part of what you do?
Context. Everything is what we would call receptive context. Everyone who comes to a poem or a novel or an essay and reads it alone in the space of their own mind is going to hear those words and interpret those words differently. That's why we get varying interpretations of every important text we know of. And yet, multiple people can also read the same text, and there's an environment that they feel. It's almost like a glow that comes off of the text that people can agree on. So when I'm translating a Chinese poem, I'm not necessarily focused on an index of specific meanings that I want to take from the Chinese text and represent in English. I'm interested in the narrative voice that creates a certain feeling.
What, if anything, about growing up in a rural Maine town, a rural Maine setting, has maybe piqued more your interest in something so far away from your world, or has set you up for success in your career?
Absolutely. Both and all of it. Shout out to O-Chan Comics and the people who do the Temp Tales comics and the Bert and I stories and the fishermen and the lobstermen and the farmers and the loggers that I grew up with. Their language pervades my brain. And it gives me a go-to. Like when I'm translating work that shifts between official languages and local dialects, that uses rich colloquialisms, I can hear the difference between them.
Although China and Maine may seem a world apart, Morse says they have more in common than one might think, and that has helped him in his translating.
Beijing Chinese is not the same as like standard Mandarin. There's a different accent, there's a different dialect, and most importantly, among the locals, there's a different worldview. And in particular, there's this kind of like dry, sardonic humor that's very much just rings so true to a Mainer, to like a New Englander, that kind of like self-deprecating, sarcastic, but also good-natured humor.
Morse has translated 2 novels by the popular Chinese writer Ge Fei. His most recent Peach Blossom Paradise was named a National Book Award Finalist for translated literature.
It's a huge honor. It's the sort of honor that, we hope for once in our lives.
Canaan Morse is now at Harvard getting his PhD in ancient Chinese literature. He couldn't tell us what he's working on next, but he did say he hopes to bring more of Gaffei's work to the English-speaking world.
Great work that he's doing.
Makes you wish you'd paid more attention to foreign languages when you were coming through school, doesn't it, Amanda?
Yeah, there wasn't much I could do with Latin.
Yeah, and Mandarin was not offered when I was in school.
No.